computer. It's wonderful to be here with my colleagues that I started studying with to become a psychoanalyst and have been together with. We're going to all make brief remarks about our recollections of sort of mosaic of memories and feelings. And one of the things I remember is Fonya's announcement in the WPSP newsletter, which changed my life because it said people getting together to talk about analytic training, which we couldn't have at the time. So I'm still grateful for that. And then a colleague of mine in Peru, hearing me describe what we did, how we helped form our classes, our schedules, how we were going to do things, how we were going to work the supervision, how Shelley was going to give the first scientific programs that were so wonderful. He said, you gave birth to yourselves. That doesn't happen often in analytic communities. So that's very special. And that's my impression that I want to pass on. Fonya, would you like to say something?
I would. I had been waiting for years, along with a number of other people in the Washington area, hoping that the rules of the American Psychoanalytic would change and they would train us. However, it looked like, since that was the 1970s and the year was 1984, that wasn't happening. So I thought, well, I need to investigate institutes, and I found the New York Freudian, with a very strong faculty, people that were publishing papers in addition to doing very good clinical work, I thought, because of the strength of the training program. And I thought this would be ideal if only, somebody like this would come to help us. Then I luckily met Helen Goodman. She came down for a conference, and I talked with her about it, explained that would like people to come to us because a number of us had small children that didn't want to travel. Well, she said, I'll talk to Muriel Weinstein and Bill Greenstadt. And she did. And meanwhile, I talked to people here, and I put the ad in, like Nancy said in the WPSP newsletter. More people came, and we met at my house. It was very exciting and very much fun. And three of us went up to New York to meet
Yes, remember.
Bill and Helen and Steve and Muriel. We had a good meeting. They said, we would, if you can get a class together, we'll take this in front of the board. We think they'll do it. And sure enough, they did. And I'm just so pleased to be a part of it. It was a great moment to have this wonderful thing that we'd all wanted so long. All right.
Now we're alphabetical.
All right. Okay, Harriet. Okay.
So back in 1984, at the same time as Fonya was talking to Helen, I had interviewed at the Baltimore Washington with Paul Gray. And he said that if I wasn't going to do research, that I should go elsewhere. And I said, well, where shall I go? And he told me about the New York Freudian Society. So that coalesced at the same time. Then we all went up, those of us on that train ride. I'm trying to think who it was beside you and me. I think there were two others of us
It was
who
Randy.
are no longer in our group.
Right.
And then we met regularly well before we actually launched. And so we began to establish a connection and an identity. It was a very heady time, and we were all very, very excited at this. So next, who's the next alphabet?
It was a thrilling time because those of us who are psychologists never imagined we could be analytically trained in 1984, 1985. Psychoanalysis in North America was solely for psychiatrists and predominantly white male psychiatrists. So here we were, a group of female, predominantly psychologists, finding an institute, thanks to Fonya for leading us there, an institute of psychologists that included a vast proportion of female psychologists who were prolific in their writing and presenting, and I think who served as mentors in some very important way for all of us as we were developing our analytic minds, to think about our own writing, our own developing as clinicians, but also our own writing, which I think was also very unique about the Freudian Society. So to have a chance to launch an institute in DC for non-medical clinicians that didn't preclude people without MDs, who could also have open arms to women who were having babies. Many of us began to have babies early in our analytic training and would bring our babies, our infants, to our lunch breaks to nurse them. So it was a way of training that nurtured us as we were nurturing our growing families. And it was a very warm, holding, stimulating, challenging environment, all mixed together for the development of our analytic minds.
When I think back to that time, I think about how young and the world was in front of me. I was in my early 30s, heard about this. I was in analysis. I knew I wanted to be an analyst. I never thought about things like, what would this credential really mean? Would it mean, who would recognize it? I just knew I wanted to become an analyst. And it was such a wonderful opportunity with, as it turned out, one of the most incredible groups of people in this represented today. And even there were, I think, 12 of us, 11 or 12. And I think the Freudian Society didn't know quite what they were getting. They didn't expect, I don't think, that they would get a group of people of actually so many leaders and that ultimately became interested in developing a program in Washington, and who ultimately became interested in making this a Twin City organization. Harriet, with us today, was our first president of the entire Freudian Society from Washington, and I became the second. Everybody in this group has taken major leadership positions in the organization and the IPA. So I think I wanted to say that I think we had what I always think of as a pioneer spirit. One of our instructors, Donald Kaplan, wrote an article. He called it, the article, it was about his teaching in Washington. He called it, "Have Freud, Will Travel." And I think that pioneering spirit and our love of psychoanalysis has really infused us and energized us.
I had come to Washington from New York, where there was a really lively tradition of psychology and psychoanalysis. So I'd had some training there. So when I came to Washington, there were no colleagues. There was nothing here for us. So I joined this group. I remember the very first, I was practically days in Washington, not very long. And the liveliness and the earnest quality of the group was really impressive. I don't think we birthed ourselves. I think they did birth us, but I think we worked very hard. We did scientific programs. We arranged our locations to meet. We did all of the work that was necessary to keep us going, to nurture us. But what I remember the most in the beginning was the sparkle in the eye, the intellectual liveliness of our faculty, of the people who came to teach us. And thinking about theory and writing, I found the climate and the intellectual atmosphere really stimulating and very moving. And I think we have been able, all of us in this group, we write, we've put on conferences, we've really nurtured each other in our creativity, singularly and as a group. It meant a great deal to me all these years.
Do we want to stop, or are there little memories that are coming up? And
I think it's time to stop.
okay, so this has been the first group in a kind of reunion after how many years? Somebody counted up. And this was the beginning, and we nurture that spirit to continue. So,
And I want to say to all of you how much I care about you and thank you for being us.
Yes, I feel very similarly, very much the same way. Great relationships and wonderful experiences that we had together and are still having in different ways. You know? Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Nancy.